Go.
All right,
okay,
let's
here
see.
folks now, and here is Cheryl. So I am going to promote her to a panelist. Welcome, everybody.
Right. See everybody coming in. We're giving a few seconds for folks who have been waiting to get joined into the webinar.
Yes. And Cheryl, I see you in the guest list. I'm sending you an invite to be a panelist. If you see that pop up. Okay, there we go.
She's coming in.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. We're getting a little bit of a quorum going here now. That's great. Okay. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Nick Hool. I'm joining you from lovely, sunny Northeast Ohio. Rob, it's not too hot today for me, so you know I'm enjoying the day. I am the Director of Client Engagement here at the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, and ELI for short. And we are very thankful for our three panelists to be joining us today. A little bit of housekeeping though before we start. As you probably heard when you joined, this session is being recorded. We will send that recording link out within 24 hours at the end of this session tomorrow, along with some helpful links. We're also getting a live transcript of it, so I'll have those closed captions included on the YouTube link as well, just for anyone who's interested. Don't worry about furiously taking notes or anything like that. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to throw those in the chat or the Q&A function. I'll be monitoring both. That'll be along the bottom of your Zoom window. You can open both of those up and type your questions as you see fit. And we'll let the panel kind of talk for 25, 30 minutes or so uninterrupted. And then I'll chime in with some more questions unless there's something very relevant to what they're immediately talking about. Other than that, I think that's all the basic housekeeping. So I will hand it over to ELI President Rob Herndon to kind of kick the event off.
All right, thanks so much, Nick. And thanks to everyone for joining us and taking this time on your Tuesday afternoon, assuming you're on the East Coast, to spend some time with us, or Tuesday morning, or maybe Wednesday, who knows if you're past the international dateline. So thanks for coming in and hanging out with us during this time. We're really excited about our webinar today. The three panelists we have for you have been doing some amazing work, all in the Daytona Beach area of Florida. And we're gonna have a lively discussion. This is a continuing work of ours. If you noted, this is our 7th Entrepreneurship and Education webinar we've held this year, and it's continuing from 2021. It's something we started during the pandemic because we wanted to give voice to folks who are out in some way working to bring entrepreneurial mindset education to their schools, to their communities, in order to expand its reach and make a larger impact on our world. So really excited to get into the discussion today. Before we get started and I introduce our panelists, I just want to give everyone an opportunity to tell us where they're coming from. So if you could jump into the chat and just tell us who you are, where you're coming from, so that all of us as a group have an idea of who's listening in here. I don't think I mentioned, and while you're doing that, while you're jumping into the chat and making those comments, I don't think I mentioned I'm calling in from the southeast corner of Virginia, in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia, from Williamsburg. Nick mentioned he's up in Ohio, and then of course our panelists are down in Florida. So as everyone is getting situated and letting us know where they're coming in from, I'll go ahead and give you just a quick introduction of our panelists. I noticed that Nick did put their bios out into the chat so that you can read a little bit more about them if you're interested. But our panelists today are a very esteemed group. Dr. Cheryl Weems is the Associate Vice President for the Mary Carl College of Continuing Education at Daytona State College. And I know from meeting her and talking with her, she first heard about our work quite a number of years ago and had been looking for ways to integrate the entrepreneurial mindset into her work. So it'll be really interesting to hear her discussion today. Ms. Robin King is the president and CEO of CareerSource Flagler Volusia. So if you're not familiar with CareerSource and how that works within Florida, I'm confident you will have a great understanding of the work that they do after this. I had the pleasure of meeting Robin and her team first in September of 2019 when our team went down to do a entrepreneurial mindset facilitator training with a group from the Daytona area that Robin had been at the forefront of bringing in. They hosted us for that training. And then also from CareerSource Flagler Volusia is Charlie Howe. He's the vice president for business development and technology and has been trained as one of our expert facilitators and is running a program now to help expand the impact of the entrepreneurial mindset across the community. Now, the real purpose of our talk today is to learn about how these folks, at a CareerSource location and also at an institution of higher education at Daytona State College are interacting their community on a broader scale than you would probably think. So really looking forward to getting into it. So I guess I think we've given everyone enough time to join us. We're a few minutes in.
There was a technical issue. I fixed it quickly. The chat was disabled, so folks are now pouring their information in. So thank you.
There we go. Thanks for that, Nick. And I see folks. Okay, we do have some folks that it's the morning out in Yorba Linda, California, Marietta College. Jackie actually spent some time there where we did our entrepreneurial mindset training. So it's great to see you. Heather Kirkpatrick from Los Angeles. Great. We've got folks. Jan Rademacher, also from Daytona. So maybe folks that down there in Florida, Port Orange, London, Kentucky. So we're starting to get folks from all over the place. Lots of folks coming in from Daytona Beach, Miami. Excellent. So that's outstanding. And I think we'll continue to have folks drift in as we get going as well. So I guess to go ahead and get the conversation started, I wanted to first give an opportunity to Robin to talk about, I mentioned the idea that we came down there in September of 2019, and I'm curious about, where that went from that time. What was I know you were a big driver in making a larger impact with these ideas on the community. So can you talk about your vision and how that's moved forward since then?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. I am going to give a backstory first of how I even got introduced to this. So, CareerSource is a local workforce development board. We are successful when we find people, get them employed and successfully employed and earning self-sufficiency. And I had heard at a conference a couple of years before I met Gary, a woman introduced herself as a serial entrepreneur, and she said, which is a good thing because I'm unemployable. And, so that kind of stuck with me. It's like, we work with populations that struggle with employment, that they're crying, that they cycle through, or the doors are closed because they are returning citizens, or they've come out of prison or jail. And so that was what piqued my curiosity to attend the pre-conference that was done for NOB in March of 2019. And I had not really liked to use the word entrepreneur before then. That's a lofty word that, we put on people and their names go on buildings, and, they talk about venture capital and all this. My husband, who has had a couple of startups, would never call himself an entrepreneur. He's a small businessman, right? And so I got to learn about ELI, and along with that, there was a young man who was from a restaurant in upstate New York, who talked about how he uses this mindset training for his employees. So no one is just a waiter or just a server. They can't call themselves just that. and no one can refer to them. They all have a piece of the business that they do more than just whatever. And so it made it accessible. And when we invited the people that we did for that training that you came down in September, they were from most of the local schools. They were individuals who work with youth providers. They do mentorship programs, this across, we even had a couple businesses in there. And then what we had hoped was kind of really 3 phases. One was to train all of our internal staff, which is what Charlie was in the process of doing when March of 2020 happened. And then the next was, how do we turn these into workshops? All the skill sets that we're talking about that's in this entrepreneurial mindset are the soft skills that every business wants for their employees. And then the third phase that we hope to initiate is kind of replicate what Albuquerque did, right? And doing this for employees so that they're more resilient, they're not as vulnerable as we saw what happened during the pandemic. And so that was really what kind of initiated this, because our goal is prosperity for all. And this is a skill set that whether they have a side business, they work full-time self-employed, or they just take the skill set to an employer. The white paper that ELI wrote a year or so ago now, that equates the entrepreneurial spirit to the human spirit.
Right.
It's every young adult class I get to talk to these days, about half of them raise their hand when I say, who wants to work for themselves? Well, you still need to be the boss. You still need to have all these things in place. And so how do we help them achieve that? And so that's kind of what the timeline has been on moving forward.
Wow. Yeah, that's great, Robin. And, when you were speaking there, that idea of accessibility and from our perspective at ELI, we think of it as a democratization to this word entrepreneurship, because I think so many folks look at it that it is something that doesn't relate to them. It's something that's, venture capital, based Silicon Valley, et cetera. And when we talk about it through that definition of that we use with entrepreneurial people, that essentially they're solving problems for other people, and in doing so they're empowering themselves. That's where that entrepreneurial idea can sort of get some traction in a much broader scale.
My parents were dairy farmers, and I had never considered them to be entrepreneurs until I read the Ice House program.
There you go.
Because then I can remember the conversations around, choosing which seed to plant and all the little intricacies that as a kid I really didn't know what they were talking about. But yeah, that was a hard job. I knew it was a hard job, but I just hadn't thought of it in that entrepreneurial way before, of how they had to make the choices that they made.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks for that. All right. So I want to, I'm going to come back to the work that CareerSource is doing in a minute, where we're going to have Charlie describe his, what he's been doing and his work as well. And then of course, we'll hear more from Robin moving forward. But I want to bring into the conversation Dr. Weems and get the perspective of a higher education institution there in Daytona Beach from Daytona State. And so pretty much the same question to you, Dr. Weems, like how did you come across these ideas and then bring it to what you've been able to do at Daytona? If you could describe some of that, please.
Absolutely. And good afternoon all, and pleased to be part of this conversation. I think it's critically important. And before I forget, I want to thank the Daytona Group community for chiming in, as well as some of our advisory board members, because they've been critical to the development and the momentum that we've established here on our campus community. I first learned of the entrepreneurial mindset initiative, if you will, as a result of my affiliation with NACCE. And I met Becky Corbin back in 2014, and she was talking about this entrepreneurial mindset curriculum that we wanted to introduce into the community college system. And I was, convinced to take the training at that time because I was intrigued. I read the Ice House book, And I was very intrigued by this curriculum. And I visited some of the campuses that were testing the entrepreneurial model at that time. I was, really looking for a place to land. And I wanted to be in an environment where entrepreneurial education and training would be prominent to the campus community. So I took the course and did due diligence in terms of looking at colleges where these kinds of concepts were being introduced. And at the same time, I was indoctrinating my children, to these 8 principles. They were all either going into college or coming out of college at the time. And I'm looking at this as an empowerment tool. I kept looking at these principles as, I didn't even speak to them about entrepreneur, anything. I just said, these are critical empowerment tools. And if you want to demonstrate yourself as having value in anything you do, in society, in the workplace, understand these 8 principles because they will empower you. And I would just preach this to my children. When I got to this college, we didn't have an in yet to really talk about entrepreneurial mindset. We have a business program, of course, and entrepreneurial training in that certification in the business program. But we did not yet have an opportunity to talk about entrepreneurial mindset in the way that we do now. To the credit of our chancellor, he identified a funding source for entrepreneurial education and training. He wanted to see this type of initiative embedded in this college system, and they put out an RFA, and we applied, and the RFA addressed mindset training. Let's get a proposal around entrepreneurial mindset training. And demonstration capacities that students could demonstrate as entrepreneurs. Well, immediately ELI came to my mind because I knew that that was a curriculum that could be easily implemented here at the college. And we wrote the grant to include the ELI component. It was interesting, however, when we first started, because we wrote the grant as though we would have to recruit students. So we thought it was going to be a set aside, like a curriculum or a program over there to the right. And we wrote the grant whereby we would initiate a recruitment campaign and try to find 40 students or
work really hard to just get 40,
that would
right?
be interested in just saying, I'll do it, and trying to make it as attractive as possible. And walked down that path for just a couple of months until we realized how easily it would be to integrate the curriculum into the current fabric of the instructional delivery program. So that was the first great aha moment that we learned how our faculty call it a plug and play. You kind of look at the entrepreneurial mindset curriculum and you just pick it up and drop it down in the course you're teaching, and then you begin to integrate seamlessly the components of the ELI training, and it integrates so well with the content area delivery. So that was the first aha moment. Once we did that, the numbers of students introduced to ELI magnified. Yet trying to recruit students, they were in classes that where faculty had been volunteered, not voluntold, but they volunteered to just, because that was the first thing Gary said to us when he came. How many people in this room were voluntold to take
right.
And not a single faculty member raised their hand. They all immediately said, this is something we thought would be important to our delivery. We thought this would be an important skill set for our students to have. We understand the value of the entrepreneurial mindset development. So we started with 3 bold faculty members who came forward and said they would take the training. They piloted it for us. In the very next cycle, we had 8 more. In the very next cycle, we had maybe 8 more. We now have 32 faculty that are certified and in position to deliver this curriculum. When we met with our board, part of our grant, we had indicated that we would constantly want community input as we developed and folded this program out. We have representation on our advisory board from the community, from the business community, from the Chamber of Commerce. We have community representatives, other educators on our advisory board. And so we were 3 months into this program, and we convened the advisory board to kind of help us provide some direction for this initiative. And in that first meeting, and I have it right here, we keep it here to remind us what that advisory board told us. They said, as you roll out this entrepreneurial mindset initiative, make sure that you plan it so that it evolves as a best practice for Daytona State College. Then they said, make sure that as you move through your implementation, you benchmark your standards. Then they said, don't forget to generate success narratives. Make sure we capture what students are saying about their experience. Make sure we're capturing what faculty are saying about their experiences. Key to this was expanding the outreach to all students. If you remember, we said we would just try and find 40. And no, expand this to all students, our advisory board said. Make sure everyone has an opportunity to engage in entrepreneurial mindset training. And then they said, integrate this curriculum for over 1 semester. For one, make sure everybody who comes on this campus in that first year that they take this class. But we still haven't done that yet because we think we have more opportunity to penetrate when all of the faculty are certified. So wherever a student turns at any level, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, they're going to hear about entrepreneurial mindset, and they're going to hear it scaled up. So the student coming in the first year has the ELI training, gets the orientation, but look, they hear it again in their junior year when they're coming through their program. This faculty member is now talking to them about entrepreneurial mindset principles and empowerment principles, and reminding them that, these are principles that would, one, position them to become valuable employees, or two, prepare them for the entrepreneurial journey. So they're hearing this conversation all through their experience at Daytona State College. So that was one of the recommendations that we have somewhat veered from, not making it a course that all students take in the first year, but making it a program that all students are exposed to throughout their tenure at Daytona State College. They said add opportunities to train faculty, and we did. We started with 3, we now have 32. They said that we should increase the branding, not recruiting, but branding and advertisement for the entrepreneurial mindset program. If you look behind me, what we did was we took those 8 principles and we grabbed quotes from the book and attached those quotes to the principles. So for example, for knowledge, we grabbed the quote that said, knowledge combined with effort is the engine that drives entrepreneurs. We blew that up into a card that we have distributed all across campus. And we took the same image and created posters behind me. So whenever you walk into an area on our campus, you'll see these images behind me specific to the discipline. So the cosmetology and barbering students will have a set of 8. The digital media students have a set of 8. The humanities students have a set of 8. So they see themselves in these interpretations of these empowerment principles. And then they said that we should reach out to companies that might be interested in EMO training. And that's the Albuquerque model, where we have a continuing ed division here. And our continuing ed director is marketing EMO to employers, particularly city employers who are looking to train the fundamental levels in their workforce on EMO initiatives and empowerment initiatives. And then finally, our advisory committee told us to always plan for the next level of implementation, to suggest that this is not fleeting. This is not a one time, a run and done, one and done kind of thing, that we build sustainability. So what we now have done as we approach our 3rd year is we have now leveraged our entrepreneurial mindset resources from that funding that we received from the state. And now we're looking at other pockets of revenue that will allow us to continue the momentum of providing an entrepreneurial mindset opportunity training on our campus. Through those resources, we opened up this Entrepreneurial Resource Center, and here students can come and interact with the entrepreneurial mindset material. We have books here that reference the curriculum. We have opportunities for them to work independently online if that's their preference. We have a facilitator who provides support for those students. But by and large, students are experiencing this program in their courses that they're enrolled in now. And we just recently recorded our faculty in a roundtable. We just asked them to sit around a table and talk about their experiences from soup to nuts, their first impression of the entrepreneurial mindset opportunity. We call it the Entrepreneurial Mindset Opportunity Initiative. So we asked the faculty to talk about their first experiences with ELI, what they thought, any trepidation they may have had in terms of working with the curriculum, how to, empower their students, using these 8 principles, how to supplement the curriculum. We were lucky enough to identify, we call them entrepreneurs in residence. These were entrepreneurs from the community who joined our staff to work with our faculty to help them to interpret some of these entrepreneurial principles to make them more practical and applicable to delivery. And so they were resources. They served as resources for our faculty. We also had an entrepreneur in residence who made it very easy for faculty to identify speakers to come in and speak with students around these principles. And so we have built a repository of entrepreneurs who come in and visit our classes, mentor our students. We call them lunch and learns. We call them chat and choose. We have roundtables, all those things. So the faculty on this video are sitting around saying, when I first started, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to take my training and translate it into an instructional model. And as they're speaking about those experiences, they all get to that moment when they said, and then it became easy. It became like a plug and play. It became second nature to us in terms of how to talk about entrepreneurial mindset empowerment over the course of teaching my classes. And so we use that on our website. We're creating what we call an information guide that will go on the website to kind of prompt other faculty to introduce this idea to other faculty who might be interested in advancing their opportunity to train and certify and become facilitators in this EMO initiative. But everyone who comes into our area, they leave with a gift. And we always say, you have to read this book. So now people are just calling to say, you have a book over there, can I get it? How much is it? And look, we have these books for you. Once they read this book, they come back and they want to know more about the implementation of this in their own background. I have to say, when I first read Uncle Cleve's testimony, it put me in mind of my grandfather, who was a serial entrepreneur from the South. He was a man with no further education than junior high school, and they didn't call it that at that time. And at the age of 14, he began to look in his community for opportunities because he was also supporting his family. And the first thing that he did was delivered wood. He just saw that there was a need for firewood. And he would tell us a story of how he saw that need and collected firewood and delivered it to houses. And that fire that he had when he talked about each of his initiatives, they were driven by choice, opportunity, knowledge, brand, wealth. And I said, that's what Uncle Cleve.
That's right.
That's what typifies. So that's the entrepreneurial mindset, and that's the spirit. Until the day my grandfather died, he still was an entrepreneur. He ended his career running a cab company in a community that had no internal transportation, in a rural community. And he saw the need to start a cab company, which was foreign to those people. And that a cab company exists today. So, I mean, there are some very practical examples of this mindset that stem from Uncle Cleve's story And it's consistent. Every time the entrepreneurs would come and speak to our students, they would listen and say, hey, that's opportunity, that's action, that's how someone interprets brand, that's how we create wealth. Or we would ask the entrepreneurs to come in and say, speak to knowledge, speak to choice.
Right, give them that
Opportunity, speak to
direction.
wealth. So we played it both ways. But between the curriculum that we offered that our faculty expertly implemented and integrated into their existing curriculum, the entrepreneurs who came in brought it to life.
Right, that's
So the
that.
students are so excited about this. So there's no recruitment at all. Students want this. They want more. They understand from this experience how empowered they have become. And our faculty, I think, are resonating and walking right alongside of them, looking at this wonderful tool to prepare our students for the world of work. The 3 questions we ask students, and they're hanging up here too. And if you answer yes to any of these questions, this is the program for you. Are you a visionary? Yes or no? Then we ask the student, would you like to become a valuable employee? Yes or no? And then we ask the golden question. Have you ever thought about becoming an entrepreneur? And if you answered yes to any of these questions, this is the program for you.
Wow, that's amazing. And hearing you talk through all the steps that y'all have taken there at the college and seeing the posters behind you and seeing the impact that started with that story. I see Clifton Talbert over your right shoulder, you know, with his family story and the book that he and our founder, Gary Schoniger, wrote together, like how that has been embedded into the system there at the college is really amazing to see. And that's what you mentioned, the white paper that Nick, I think, had put the link out for. That's a big theme within that paper, is it's really all about embedding these ideas so that they just become part of the natural fabric within not just our higher education systems, but in the work that Charlie and Robin are doing as well. So out in our communities, for those who maybe aren't getting trained through the college at the time, but can still understand these ideas. So thank you for expanding on those. Charlie,
Can I offer, I just want to say, when you mentioned Clifton Talbert, we thought it would be important to have kickoff events as each year as we move through this program. So the first year, Gary came as our, in terms of kicking off the event for our faculty who had been trained as they're working their
ready to
right. We invited Gary to come in, and he did the kickoff event with faculty, and I think put them at ease and had a great conversation about the direction that they were taking their programs in, and it was a great kickoff. We had the same time we staged a kickoff for the students, and that's when we brought Clifton Talbert in.
Okay.
He spoke, he mesmerized the
He's
students.
an amazing storyteller, which comes through so well.
Exactly. And so he was our first kickoff speaker for the students. The second year, we brought in his son, Marshall Danzy Talbert, because when Clifton was here, he said, if you do this again, invite my son. He's a great entrepreneur. And we invited him the next year, and he was our second kickoff speaker for the students. So each year we're trying to do kickoff events every fall just to kind of get community engaged around this whole initiative, to hopefully get more buy-in, and then to learn more from the speakers who come and help us, continue to set this record straight for us. So I'm sorry. Thank you.
No. That's great that you could expand on that. And I will point out, if for all our listeners, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in. And I'm going to let Charlie give an overview of what he's been working on, and then we'll get to questions that have come forth. So, Charlie, I also had the great opportunity to meet you in September 2019. I remember you driving Gary and I around, and you were our transportation those days we were there. So thank you again for that. But I want to give you an opportunity, because now, you've been sort of taking this and running with it on the ground there through CareerSource. And so I wanted to get your perspective of, from that time when we showed up and trained you that first time now to all the work that's going on, if you could give us an understanding of that.
Thank you. Well, so first let me say that entrepreneurship doesn't mean necessarily starting a business. If you're an employer and you have an employee that's in a cubicle, would you rather that employee just do what they're told and nothing else, or would you rather that employee look down the hall, see a problem, and go and solve that problem? So as Cheryl just pointed out, one of her questions was, do you want to be a valuable employee? And I would submit to you that employers today are looking for people that can be that valuable employee, that can go and solve problems for them and have that entrepreneurial mindset while they're doing their work. To that end, the grant that we're currently working with, its goal is to help create people who can have innovative solutions and make informed choices and improve their lives through self-sufficiency. And the way that we're going to do that is by training 250 people in our community with this entrepreneurial mindset. If we do that many people in this community, it's not rocket science. It's going to improve the workforce development and economic development of the community. Some may start jobs or new companies. Some may just become invaluable employees, but all of them will have a better self-sufficiency than they had before they started. So in order to do 250 people in our community, and you have to know that there's an optimal number of people that are in a class, and I would say 8 to 10 is probably as much as you really want to have, because otherwise you can't really work closely with them on the experimentation and the adaptation part. So at that level of classroom, we have to have a lot of facilitators. So my job recently has been to train those facilitators. And since we started this program, we've trained 24 facilitators that's going to administer to those 250 people. And we got some of those classes already started. And let me just say that the entrepreneurial mindset has a particular place. And if you look at most of the entrepreneurial training that's out today, it is business management. It's business plan and it's financing, et cetera. And all of that is good and it has its place. But prior to getting to that point, somebody has to have already come up with an idea, experimented with it, tested the idea, got opinions from people and maybe friends or family or customers to kind of perfect that idea so that they know it's going to be something that they can make money at or something that they can help other people with. That part of that process is the mindset in which we are facilitating. You can't really teach that mindset, but you can help them because it's more of a behavior than anything else.
Yeah, it has to be experienced.
Yeah, you can give them the knowledge and then help them with the experiential part and show them others that have done the same thing to help them develop that behavior that's going to turn into that mindset. And that's what we're attempting to do. Now, the grant does a number of other things too, but that's the part that I'm involved with there.
Awesome. Yeah, and Charlie, I know just in speaking with you about how this was getting designed, you're trying to get it out into communities to bring the full community in and make sure that folks that are being exposed to this maybe haven't seen similar opportunities like this for workforce development and training before. And so you've been able to reach out to them as well. Okay, so now that we've got a good understanding of each of our panelists, sort of where they fit into this puzzle and what's going on, Nick, do we have any questions that we can address that have come in?
Yeah, two for Dr. Weems. The first, and they're both from Courtney Allen. Thank you,
Okay.
Courtney. What has been the response of ELI and the Ice House program from the first year experience students? And are you able to track their progress by their junior year?
Well, we didn't use that model. At first, that was a proposal that we integrate this into the first year experience program. But we've quickly realized that after that first year, the conversation might get lost.
Right.
Because, and a lot of times, students aren't always, the conversation might get lost. So the approach that we took was at any level, we're tracking those students. We have them all in our D2L learning system, learning management system. We're tracking their goal and accomplishment toward completing the modules and earning certification.
Great.
So students have a continuous experience with the curriculum. Again, we're finding that we're reaching more students that way, and the conversation is embedded and scaled at different levels. So a student can come in the first year and take, I don't know, let's not even in workforce, let's say they take a class in the humanities, because we didn't even envision students in the humanities getting involved, our faculty, but they have. So they're taking English 101, something like that, 1190, something like that. And then they are introduced to this curriculum. Then they're in the next level class, and here's this faculty member talking about this again and scaling this conversation up. They're still in the learning system, so we're still tracking their progress toward meeting goals. In our cosmetology and barbering program, those students are so motivated by this program that in the 13 months that they're in the program, they complete the whole module, all of the certificate, and they get this, and they're eligible for the certification. So, we have different models of where this and of how we have monitored and how we are tracking the student success. But because we now have 32 faculty as a result of this July class, we already have about 722 students that have gone through curriculum, and this is in the past year. So now with 32 on board, and as we approach the fall semester and our faculty are teaching multiple sections, we expect to see that number grow exponentially. And we will continue to track the success of those students, because if we understand right from ELI that there'll be a badging system.
Yes.
That we'll be able to introduce, that's very intriguing and motivating to both faculty and staff. So once we have all of those and those things in place, I think we'll see the tracking that we're doing will result in a little more for the student, something more tangible.
Well, my understanding is that the focus has been on CTE programs at the school. So credentialing and certification is, that's where it's all at within those programs. And something we've realized at ELI is that there's really, because as Charlie alluded to, you have to experience that, you have to go through this entrepreneurial process. And it's also not something that I can teach you this class today and then tomorrow you can pass an exam on it. There is some time here that needs to go on where the behavior becomes more normalized. Exactly. And so what we've recognized then in our work is that there is a need for a certification and credentialing program. So we've now launched our badging process. We mentioned, Charlie having now our expert certification, so he can be teaching other facilitators how to get these ideas out into the world. And so we have different levels that are going to allow. So we're hopeful that students will find value in that, and they'll also find value in being able to show that to their employers through LinkedIn and get some questions around, hey, what do you mean by this entrepreneurial mindset? Can you explain what that is, and have them go into detail on that? So that's awesome. Charlie and Robin and Nick, if there's any other questions, I'll let you throw it in after this one.
Go ahead.
To sort of tie into what Dr. Williams is talking about, because at Daytona State, they've integrated this in with the CTE, with the school, with the classes. y'all are doing this as a separate class, a class on its own, where you're only working with them on this entrepreneurial mindset and taking them through the entrepreneurial process. How does that compare in your experience to other more hard skill, possibly type of programs that you've done in the past, where maybe you're giving them getting them certifications in computer programming or in some other type of sort of hard skill? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So the purpose of the program that we're initiating is very similar to what Cheryl has just explained. It's just amplifying what they're doing. It's getting to people, though, that may never step on campus. So we're going out into the community, and specifically homeless shelters, and whatever people are there. And there are 3 designated zip code areas where the poverty level is considerably higher than the rest of the county. And so it's intended for returning adults to get them back into education. So this is kind of like the hook to help them realize that they have access to prosperity as well, right? And so the facilitators that Charlie's been training already have programs set up, right? So we're not necessarily creating this thing that will stand by itself. It's the best group to describe our youth mentors. They have mentorship programs, and so they will be implementing this into their regular curriculum. For the purpose of the grant, we're going to have some standalones because we need to show those numbers and getting them back into education. But one of the driving forces for me was the sustainability past the grant. We have, we ramp up programs, they run for the grant, and they stop when the grant ends.
Right.
So this is a way to get it out in the community at a variety of levels. And same as like with Cheryl, that once these teachers have this certification, this knowledge, that doesn't stop just because the grant has stopped. So we'll be able to continue to grow that. I'm very hopeful that we will find more facilitators from our first classes that they in turn would want to continue to teach us either at the different homeless shelters or actually one of our partners in this is Halifax Health. It's our large hospital here in Daytona Beach. They're going to be the venue where we'll teach the classes, but also then showing the opportunities that are available to work in a hospital, right? I mean, there's over 243 occupations under the roof of hospitals, like many cities. And to show them more than just what you would see when you walk through the door of an emergency room where you have an appointment,
right?
All those other things behind the scenes that they have access to. And because Halifax Hospital is right in the heart of the zip code that has the highest poverty level, we really want to make that connection of opportunities for them. And they can see that they really do have those choices, that opportunity that they can make up their own minds and move forward with something like that.
That's amazing. And then it also, like you said, it exposes them to all those occupations and they go, wow, I'm really interested in, I don't know, what a phlebotomist does. I want to draw blood. So now I can see a path forward and some hope moving forward rather than thinking that there's just really not any options.
We've layered Coursera on top of it. It's an online training. If I can't get them onto Cheryl's campus yet, it's a way to entice, saying, okay, if you want more, here's where you can get more, right? And the fact then, I had not seen the posters in your materials, Cheryl, so they will still continue that same theme, right? What we've instilled with them, that it would just continue. So long-term vision.
That's really amazing to think about, because I think about another area, and y'all have heard that know us well, have heard us talk about Erie, Pennsylvania before. And the idea there was they were going to start exposing it to middle schoolers so that then when they went on to high school, eventually higher ed, maybe the local community college or university, all these ideas that have been talked about since they were in middle school, and it just becomes natural. It just becomes part of how they come to understand the world. So that is outstanding. I wanted to point out a comment I saw from Ken, just in case the panelists hadn't seen it, offering kudos to all. This is Ken Phelps, friends on the panel, for doing this initiative with an entrepreneurial mindset of your own, because I know this hasn't been easy. Like, this is not something that, oh, just magically all came together. And speaking of that, has there been obstacles that you found particularly troubling, or maybe that you could give advice to others on how to overcome if they find themselves interested in doing a similar thing across the community, but maybe could help them through that? Is there, for open to anyone on the panel there, what ideas do you have?
So I'll start in just that there's that adage that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together, right?
Mm.
And so, I mean, what Cheryl's doing on campus and what we're doing is kind of parallel, but it's also integrated. That we can't do this just in our silos. That we especially since we do want to really make a difference throughout the entire community. This isn't just a subset like a Silicon Valley, you know, this is very narrow. This is for all. This is prosperity for all.
Yep.
And to be able to sustain that. So there's lots of players that need to be involved with that and how that works. And I love what you said, that you planned it this way and then went, aha, and so that adaptability. So I hadn't thought about it. We're being entrepreneurial in our approach to how we're implementing.
Absolutely.
I would offer, and I agree wholeheartedly with Robin, but I think the two things that might hamper the progress of a program like this on a campus, one would be the mindset of people not being able to embrace a change. Mm-hmm. So getting around that mindset of, here's something else they want us to do, added work.
Right.
I can't possibly add another thing onto my portfolio. So working through that mindset it could be a challenge, as you're trying to recruit people. But I think the value of the approach that we use here at Daytona State College is that the faculty own this. Right. Not us. We have an incredible faculty lead, Dee Gay, and she and her faculty, she and the faculty at Daytona State College own this. And they are bringing their own levels of creativity in terms of the delivery. There are enough faculty now so that there is a community of ELI certified faculty on this campus who can have conversations about what you're doing in your class and how did you try this and who did you bring in to speak and what did your students do when you did that? And so they're building their own community of best practices. And so I would think that if anyone was thinking about doing this on the campus, if you're an administrator, get out of the business and let the faculty run the show.
That's outstanding advice. I have been a associate dean in a prior life, prior work, and that's so true, because the faculty are going to create the community around it and make it sustainable. It can't be that top-down driven, thou shalt do these things, and that's what gives it the energy. And we're seeing that. You mentioned Dee. I mean, she's just amazing, and what she's bringing to the table there. So. Are there, Nick, is there any other questions that have come in? Otherwise, I've got some too. Oh, go ahead, Charlie, please.
I wanted to add to what Cheryl just said there. We're a private nonprofit, and so we're driven by our board of directors. And when you get a board buy-in, it solves some of those barriers you may have to implementing such a program. Early on, we had tremendous buy-in from our board. In fact, one of our board members is one of the trained facilitators that we just created.
Right.
So it really helps when you have the support of your board behind you, and and those are also connections into the community that can help you not only find your students, but also help solve some of those barriers that you may come up against.
Right.
Yeah, and I know that Dr. Weems mentioned like all that advice from their board. So having that, broader buy-in from those who are helping guide the organizations is critical. And once they hear what this is all about, like Robin, I think before we got started today, you made that comment, like you bring this up to anybody and you start talking about it for 5 minutes and they go, oh yeah, of course, like our people need this.
Yeah. That's the thing that, the students say they need it. Dee would share many times, her students would say, we want more, we need this. So, is there something else we can do?
Great.
We did start this, of course, focused on the CTE programs. I have a whole portfolio of workforce programs, welding and HVAC and construction and automotive. This is where this program was started. We went to that faculty first to help us launch this with Dee in cosmetology and barbering. We then went to welding, and we went to machining. And that's where we seeded this project. Little did we know that the other disciplines said, hey, we can do this too. In and out of CTE, there was value here. But I do want to mention, to credit to our students and to our entrepreneur residents, Teresa Rand, who helped brand and message all of this for us. We also hosted, and this was the second annual event, called Falcon Talk. Our Daytona State mascot is a falcon. And so Teresa, by bringing in these entrepreneurs and creating these enclaves where students have a chance to interact with entrepreneurs as part of their curriculum, because it was built in. But she also highlighted the 8 principles. And every time someone spoke, they spoke to the 8 principles, or students listened for the 8 principles. Anyway, she fashioned a TED Talk platform after Falcon Talk platform after the TED Talk. We invited students across the campus to participate in our TED Talk and our Falcon Talk program. And the students came forward and they chose a principle: opportunity, choice, action, knowledge. And they got up on that stage and they gave their Falcon Talk around that principle. It was so successful last year that we repeated that performance this year. And of course, it was elevated. The students were phenomenal. So to the point that Ken Phelps, who's on our board as well as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, recruited 2 of our students from our TED Talk, our Falcon Talk, to be on the large stage of Elevate Daytona, where they're able to share their stories. Now, one of our students has succeeded through the maze, and she will be featured at the Elevate Daytona Talk. But all of this is as a result of the exposure that our students had to these empowerment principles. And so that will become our signature event, the Falcon Talk event. And at the end of every spring semester, the students will come and, grab their card, and this is what they're speaking to. And they weave their personal experiences in their story, in their narratives, and they equate it to either being a visionary, an entrepreneur, or just being a valuable employee.
That's awesome. And that's that personalization that comes through. It's
Absolutely.
Like we talked about before, having those relatable models that they connect to. That's where, folks can really make those connections. So I'm amazed we're 58 minutes into the conversation here. It just seems like it has gone by so quickly, and it seems like there's so much more we could talk about. I do want to respect everyone's time, and we just asked our panelists to give us this hour in their already busy days. So I guess I'll just give you each a last second to say, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to cover that you really wanted to in the next minute or two?
Specifically, if there's any upcoming events, like
right,
Falcon
to try and get
Talk
folks
or another
to,
kickoff event or conferences.
Other folks in the
yeah.
local area who you'd like to get involved, who may be listening, that you could reach out to, that type of thing. Any last thoughts from everyone?
I'm sorry, Robin, go ahead.
I'm looking forward to the workshop that Gary and Charlie and I will get to do at the Workforce Summit in Orlando, September 12th. We are going to be sharing with other regional boards how they may implement something like this. And then we're going to be hosting training post that, so that we can get this not only countywide, we want it statewide.
Awesome.
So really look to see how we can get this implemented in a variety of ways across the workforce system.
I just posted a link to the description for that workforce workshop in the chat. Yeah.
And we're looking for the opportunity to certify our faculty lead here to become a master trainer for our faculty on campus. That's a very exciting opportunity that's been introduced to us. And so it gives us, again, more scalable potential to train more faculty, to get more faculty involved. So we're looking forward to being able to certify our lead faculty as a master trainer like Charlie. And then we can do a lot of the training here on our campus. And I think we'll be able to reach more people that way.
That's right. And you know, our purpose of that process is, you know, your business more than we do at ELI. So if we can give you the initial ideas, the initial concepts, make sure you're solid in how the process works, because I think, as everyone who's attending today can see, the design of our work is very flexible. It's meant to be, get the general concepts and the structure around the theory behind the entrepreneurial mindset, and then the process, the entrepreneurial process, and being able to instruct other people in those things, and then let loose, like apply it in however you see best for the constituencies you're working with. Charlie, do you have any last comments before
Yeah, just
we
real quick, we've been talking about the 8 core principles, and I just want, for those who aren't familiar with the program, I was just like to say that you don't have to be stuck in the values and beliefs and the culture that you've been brought up in, that you really can do anything you want. And these 8 principles is a framework to help you create attitudes and behaviors that allow you to go out and do anything you want. And that's why we think it'll make an impact in our community.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And I see the few last comments in the chat there. Nick mentioned our upcoming facilitator training events, so you can connect with those, the workforce summit that was mentioned. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this discussion. Like I said, I think we could talk for hours on this. Yes. But we appreciate it and look forward to connecting with you if you haven't connected with ELI before, or any of our panelists. And that might be the last question I would ask. Is everybody okay if attendees, if they have more questions, they can connect with each of you?
Certainly.
Great.
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, Nick, I'll let you close it out. Thank you all for attending. And Nick, you said there's going to be a follow-up. Any last things to say about how it goes from here?
Oh, no. So just be on the lookout for an email from me, from Nick at elimindset.com. That's NIC at elimindset.com. Within the next 24 hours, I'll have a link with the recording to this. I'll put everyone's emails, as well as a link to your various organization websites, and follow-up links to some other helpful things that we talked about throughout the presentation. Thanks,
awesome.
everybody.
All right. Well, thanks again for our panelists. Really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.